Okay, there we go. That should work now. I certainly
Okay.
hope so, because
Good stuff.
we've been working on this for weeks already.
Yeah, I know. It's
Tech.
been a great interview. I better be on top of my game here.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I just want to introduce you. You are the author of the soon-to-be famous movie, right? Where are my
Oh,
Cocoa Puffs?
very couple plus, yeah.
And which is how I think I got to find you through that. I'm not sure at this point. I don't remember. But
It's the actual book that you somehow stumbled across.
yeah,
I sold the movie option a week ago, week and a half.
right, right. But
Right.
it's I was very excited about the book because it does show a great picture for people to get to learn about bipolar disorder. And well, I have to admit that when I first read it, I said this will be a great movie. That's what I said to
Yeah,
myself.
well, when I wrote it, I was thinking, oh, this would be a great movie.
So great. Why don't you just tell us a little bit how you got involved in writing about bipolar and about Tom and Jerry and Mandy and all that crowd.
Right.
Like
Um,
Carol.
a quick little Reader's Digest version of my unillustrious writing career. I actually wrote my first novel about probably 15 years ago, and that novel was about a professor from Cornell who has schizophrenia, and I wrote that book, and I wrote another one about post-traumatic stress syndrome quickly thereafter, and then I sent it out a couple of queries, of course got rejected, was devastated, and then I just didn't write again because I'm an optometrist by profession, so I didn't write for, I don't know, 10 years. And then when mental illness assaulted my personal world, I was moved to write again, and that's when I wrote Cocoa Puffs. And Jerry Benson, who is a psychiatrist in the book, is actually a character in my first book. Very, very small, minor character. He's the protagonist's doctor. And then my second book was all about Jerry and Tom and their brother relationship, which you've read the book, so you know that relationship's kind of interesting. So I thought, I like that family. So I took that family and threw them into Where Are the Cocoa Puffs 10 years later. So it's 10 years later when the kids are grown up, because they're little girls in the initial book, in my second novel.
Yeah, they have to be an interesting family if their mother named them Tom and Jerry, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know what's really funny about that is that I wrote the manuscript, pretty much wrote the entire manuscript, sent it off to my editor, and that was Cocoa Puffs, and I didn't even realize that until she pointed out. So I'd actually written already 2 books on that Tom and Jerry without even figuring that out. So I was pretty slow on that one. And she made me go back and put that little bit about the mother, about the cartoon, so that it would be obvious. But yeah, I'm not known for naming my characters very well, actually.
Well, I thought that was great. Actually, I'm sort of disappointed to know that you didn't do it on purpose.
No, I didn't. I stumbled on that. So hold on, I have to pick up my dog. He's driving me nuts. My daughter is supposed to be coming here. She's home for Christmas to take the dogs for a walk, but she has yet to come. So
Okay,
I apologize for my dog.
that's all right. He's
There he
quiet.
is. There he is. Okay, now
Yeah.
he's up there. So we're good. Okay, we good? All right.
So,
All right.
so you've before we talk more about about the book itself, you also involved in advocacy with NAMI, and how did tell us a little about that NAMI and what you do with them.
Yeah, NAMI, a national. Let's see if I can get it right in this time. National Alliance on Mental Illness. I got involved with them sort of by accident when my family member became ill, and I was going through all kinds of horrible, chaos in my life. One of my friends recommended that I contact NAMI, and a certain person. I just happened to call them, and wow, what a lifesaver that organization has been for me. And because of what it did for me, I've been very involved. I'm now a board member here in Syracuse. I talked to a lot of conferences, about the book, and they're just an incredible organization, great people. They have hundreds of wonderful, wonderful program. Each affiliate, they had the family to family 12-week class, which I took here in Syracuse with Sheila Gacy, and that was a lifesaver for both my husband and myself. And then I actually help assist Sheila now, kind of help teach the class. I went through the training. They have peer-to-peer classes, support. You can call them, affiliates all over the country. They probably have, in every major community, 1,000 affiliates. So it's a wonderful organization to help family members and people who are dealing directly with the illness, the support for each other.
Yeah, well, that's and so you do talking for them?
Well, I've talked to several. I've gone to conferences. I've been Syracuse, New York, our Albany one, our Minnesota I went to. And a lot of little ones. Where else did I go? Up in Champaign Valley. Presenting my book and my message. I have a little thing I do with my Cocoa Puffs box and everything about family advocacy and what's needed as far as the lack of empathy and support family members get from their community and their love, not just their immediate family, but from their coworkers and friends and family. Because I never felt so alone than when I was going through what I was going through, and there was nobody who got it. No one who understood what it's like to have a child or a sister or a brother or a loved one who is going through these horrible illnesses, and no one gets it. It's turning very judgmental. They get or they don't want to talk about it all. No, this is not something people want to talk about.
Yeah,
and that by writing my novels, because I have another one coming out in about 5 months, that I can kind of get it out there, not make it so scary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's really important because there's two things. The number one, it's scary, and number two, it's stigma, which is two big ones. They might be connected, but my guess is that even for a lot of people who it's not scary for them anymore, I think there's still a stigma, so they don't want to talk about it. I mean, I'm not afraid of it, but am I going to say something about it?
Well, and then there's the discrimination, the very real fear that people are going to lose their jobs or lose respect for that person. It's very, very real, and there's unfortunately reason for people to be afraid to disclose their illness, and that's what I would like to change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly certainly contributing in the right direction, and that's what I really like about this book, because I don't want to talk too much about the details of the book, but Mandy, who's the young lady who's suddenly taken ill, goes through an awful lot. I don't recall how long the plot is in the book of it's like a couple of months really.
Yeah, it's not very long. It's like her initial illness. It's just sort of a slice at a time. It's her very first break, very, very early in her illness, and we don't really know how it ends. I mean, it ends open-ended because she's gone through her first cycle of mania and then depression, and it's that point of her fragile recovery that the book ends. Mm-hmm. Because as we don't know how these things go.
Well, unfortunately, our society and the medical establishment doesn't really address curing these diseases. Which my personal opinion is that there are ways of curing it, but it's because we're not built for it. It's not a comprehensive enough unless you have a lot of money. You want to spend $10,000-$15,000 a month. You could probably work on getting a lot of these cases cured. But most people don't have that.
Yeah, well, right, and then there's not really any new research going into new drugs that work better, and a lot of the new drugs that are out there have a horrible, horrible side effects, so you have to get into all that, and then there's the fact that people don't seek help because of the stigma and the fear until they're well into the disease, so that they may be 10, 20 years of manic rides before they actually seek help. Mm-hmm. And then it's harder to get that help. So it's something, my feeling is we get out there and talk about it early, we get people when they're young for the first break or second break, before they start getting into that cycle, then maybe we can stop it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that Mandy's father, I don't remember. That's Tom or Jerry. Forgot right now.
That's Jerry. That's
Jerry.
Jerry.
Okay. Jerry is a psychiatrist,
Right.
and I was curious about why you chose to put that together.
Well, again, he's from my other book. He was my other protagonist's doctor, so I grabbed that family, number one. And number two, I thought it would be really interesting to show how a professional, he actually specializes in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I wanted to show how a specialist who deals with this every single day for 20-something years, how he's knocked down from the diagnosis of his own daughter's illness, even though he understands that his mother was ill. He responds a way any parent would, and and in that, plus he has that extra pressure of being the expert, so everybody turns to him and expects him to have the answer. And reality is, no offense to any psychiatrists out there, but they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they really truly don't, and I'm not saying it's their fault, but they're just pretty much throwing out meds, throwing out diagnoses, and hoping they stick. And that's pretty much the book, deals with that a little bit. And I thought that was good to put him in there and get that aspect. And it's also, I was asked once, and I was accused of being lazy. It did sort of avoid the whole nightmare most people go through of coming up with a diagnosis. I mean, that's usually a nightmare for most individuals. And that kind of skipped that whole, because the book would have been, like 500 pages long. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I think that, well, coming up with a diagnosis is difficult for the family. I think it's really important, but like you say, psychiatry does not yet know enough that many people come up with a diagnosis, and then that gets changed when you get to the next psychiatrist anyway.
Most people have 3 or 4 diagnoses through their entire life, or they'll have 2 or 1. I have some people call me because people chat with me, and I have a guy who tells me that he has pretty much every diagnosis out there. He's had them all.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, I know in my to my students, when I talk about diagnoses, I talk about DSM, the Bible for all diagnoses and things like that, and I teach them about that, and what I think about psychiatric diagnosis. But I tell them, and I say that's really important, because diagnosis today gives people the opportunity to get medication and a reimbursement.
And insurance, it comes down to whether or not the insurance is going to pay. They have to have a DSM-4, type, one diagnosis, right, to get reyoumbust.
Exactly, and
so
I think
you almost have to put a label on somebody. Otherwise, they're not going to pay for the medication. They're not going to pay for the psychiatric. You're not going to get reimbursed. So yeah, unfortunately, we have to label people, and we have to label it at that upper level in order to get reimbursement.
And it's interesting because we're going right back to the same circle, because that label is going to make the stigma and make it more difficult. But without it, you can't do anything, right, one way or the other.
Right.
It's really, really important. I know I was able to appreciate Jerry's situation, because me being a professional, and I've had the problem in my family.
Right.
People were expecting me to know how to prevent it. It says, hey, you can't, that doesn't work that way. No, and always expecting me to know what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I think it's important to that message that when you're confronted with something as a parent or a brother or a sister or whatever it is, or a child of, you have to deal with it at an emotional, personal level, and all that other stuff is really something very different. And I think that's an important message in of itself.
Right, true. I mean, the hardest part for family members is the day in and day out, dealing with their loved one. I mean, they're in your face, they're angry, they're mad, and the psychiatrist or nurse practitioner, they're living there, and they don't get the whole story. And as you know, people who are in crisis can often pull themselves together once confronted by a policeman or a psychiatrist, and all of a sudden they're totally normal. And this is why the family, it's so important for the family to be involved in the care of their loved one. I mean, the doctors have to listen to the family. I don't care about HIPAA rules or whatever. They have to. They don't have to talk, but they have to, because that's the only way you're going to get the help, and plus many family members are their primary caregiver is the parents or the husband or whatever, and yet they won't talk to the doctors won't talk to them. Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that is a big problem. That's a big problem with people. Uh, I mean, you're not into. The story wasn't there long enough to consider the idea that sometimes if you have a family member who has some mental illness and has accepted that, um, I've dealt with this in a couple of capacities. That when they are well, when they're stable, to write out that they should give the power of attorney to the concerned family members. Because when they're not well, that's never going to happen. Um,
Right.
but that's something which, of course, I wouldn't be surprised if Carol and Jerry were to consider that later on in some other sequel.
Right. Well, that's true. Except that then there's a vast majority, or not a vast majority, a percentage of people who have dealt with mental illness who are either they would not give up their power of attorney because, or give it to someone else because they don't really truly believe they were ever ill,
Yeah.
or and when they start to get ill, then it's too late. So it becomes a whole big problem, and that's of course. Then there's medication, whether they stay on their medications or not, adherence, those sort of problems. And there are some, they have the Kendra's law here in New York, which is controversial.
I
That's
don't recall that law.
that's the law that forces somebody into treatment. If
Hmm.
they are a danger to themselves or
Right.
society, they're forced into treatment. If they don't go into treatment, then they're either go back to jail or unfortunately, or they go back to the hospital.
Right. I
And
think most states have something similar to that. That
most states have something, but it's very hard to force on the people, and you have to wonder if you don't get your civil liberties in there. It's a very complicated issue. Trying to get people into treatments, keep them in treatment.
Well, the other extreme in Illinois, uh, a, a psychiatric patient, if he or she refuses medication, nobody can give it to them.
No matter what.
Yeah, even a
Yeah,
doctor, which is
yeah.
a lot crazier because if you're especially bipolar, one of the
Mhm.
indications is that you start getting hypomanic and
Right?
they don't want to use it and they'd
No,
rather be feel
no,
good.
no. Why would they? Why would they when they feel that good? Yeah, no. It's the mental health care system is got a lot of issues. Obviously, what the whole healthcare system does, but I think again, talking about it, getting it out there, because what 1 out of 5 people deal at some point in their life with a mental illness. I mean, that's a huge percentage, and that's like almost everybody you know. Everybody knows somebody, if not directly, indirectly, that's been affected by these illnesses. And yet we don't talk about it. We're afraid, or we don't want to know about it. We don't want to hear about it. You know, so that's why we're out here doing this, right? We do, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, right. I was going to ask you something and I forgot what I was going to ask. Uh, okay. So you, like you say, you're a basically an optometrist by trade, right? That's your
Right.
day job,
That's
right?
my day job.
Um, so that really has nothing to do with your involvement in mental illness or something. It came before or separate.
Yeah, no, optometry was my chosen career. Writing is something that I've always liked doing. I sort of stumbled into it. I did a lot of scientific writing because used to do scientific research before I was an optometrist. But creative writing, I absolutely love. And the creative writing, for some reason, I seem to be interested in writing about people with mental illness, and then my direct relationship with my own family members caused me to write, the Cocoa Puffs book, and then it's all kind of fell into place. And I really interested in me. My next book is the one about schizophrenia. It's been totally rewritten. It's going to be coming out in May, and that deals directly with the individual, who is not the family so much as what the individual goes through. And I don't know. It's just to me. I'm hoping that by writing novels instead of like memoirs, some literature that's very entertaining, that people will actually pick it up and read it and learn something. My target audience would actually be people who don't know anything about mental illness, and hoping now with the movie, hopefully coming out with, hopefully next year, then maybe my target audience will actually be hit. I mean, I love them all to buy the book, but so far it's been a lot of people who already, I'm preaching to the choir. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. Yes, and you wanted to get the word out there to everybody else. Because
Yeah.
what was curious is that you actually were writing about schizophrenia and PTSD prior to your own experience.
Yeah, that was really kind of freaky. That was almost like some sort of weird premonition or something. It was very freaky. I actually woke up from a dream. That first book I wrote, I had this really intense dream, and I woke up. It was like somewhere in the middle of my midlife crisis, and I woke up and I went, "Oh my God, that was such a wild, cool dream. I want to write it." And that's when I wrote the book that's going to be coming out next. Now that book's been almost totally rewritten from when I wrote it before, because now I have I have more in-depth understanding, because when I did the research for that book, I did it off from the library. We didn't have Google back then, so I actually read
Right.
books, and I read a lot of memoirs, a lot of textbooks on schizophrenia. But you can't really understand how devastating these are until you actually lived with somebody,
Right.
And so that book has been totally rewritten. And I know the last time we did this interview, I didn't have a title. I think we've come up with a title for my new book. I think.
I think.
You want to hear it?
Yes.
Now, it's been a long process coming up with this title. And it's about he's a botany professor. He spends a lot of time in the woods, on the trees. He's really into hiking. He's very into nature and the environment. So the title is, unless to come up with something better, is Sea, in SEA, Sea of Leaves, as in Sea of the Trees. Sea of Leaves.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So, yeah? What do you think?
I'm not sure
Not
yet.
gonna-
I'll tell you. I just because of your first
I know.
You-
That's
you-
been the problem. I set the bar so high with Where Are the Cocoa Puffs? The
I'll
title.
tell you, with the Cocoa Puffs, the idea of Cocoa Puffs is Cocoa Puffs are dark, and you put in
Right.
milk and they're white. So you got the black and the white. So I was thinking about Fruit Loops. I'll tell you the truth.
So I should name my next book Fruit Loops?
I'm not so sure because there's
Yeah.
other problems. If you're trying to fight, if you have to be. It's up to your. But I was thinking the other side of that is that people are going to say he's fruity, and that doesn't help the stigma problem.
Exactly. And the protagonist in the book is named Reese. So the initial thought was to name it Reese's Pieces, of course. But we thought that might not be quite a proper title for a book dealing with schizophrenia.
That one actually, I'll tell you, I like that. I like the Reese's Pieces better.
I like it too. We'll have my publisher listen to this and see if we can't change his mind. I've had a couple people not like it, but I think it's catchier.
I think it's
Yeah.
catchier. I don't think it's not not as bad as Fruit Loops and Reese's. But
Yeah.
I definitely think I think I like that one. Yeah, I'm just curious because you're saying it's from the perspective of the patient himself, which to me that sounds like you're going to be writing, like James Joyce or something.
Well,
Which I'm
it's
sure you're not.
actually- No, because I've changed perspectives. It's actually written probably about from 5 different perspectives, because I love to change points of view. It's written by him before he got ill,
Uh-huh.
and by a little bit about from the woman he's involved with, and the story goes back and forth between 5 years before he got sick and then 5 years after his first break. So the two stories go back and forth, one chapter to another. So you see him before he got sick and after he got sick. And you're getting into his head, you're also getting into the women in his life's heads, a little bit in his parents. So like Cocoa Puffs, I do change points of view, but I'm pure to the chapter, each chapter, or at least the scene. And Cocoa Puffs is written a little differently because it shows everybody's points of view at the same time.
Right.
And I did that on purpose because of the manic part of Amanda, what she's going through. She's manic, so everybody's there at once, and it works. But it's a hard way to write. You have to be careful that you don't confuse your reader. So this book, even though I do change points of views, I do it per scene.
Uh-huh.
So a little bit more traditional writing. So it's a more traditionally written book. But
Okay.
it's, you know, and it's so, but it does, he goes through his, I try to get into his head as well as I can, not
No,
having
it's
actually been
there is.
there.
You heard of there's I haven't seen this for years, but there used to be, I'm sure there is still, some sort of video thing that I probably with uh, audio that they put together to simulate a
Right,
schizophrenic
right.
experience,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah,
did that in NAMI, New York State. They had that set up. What is it called? Mind something. I can't remember, but you had the video and they had the glasses and
yeah,
yeah, yeah, it was pretty intense. It was, and they even had the thing how it set up that some of them even had the smell where they shoot smells at you while you were listening to it.
yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I think that's an important thing. I mean, I wish I had that to give to my students, but if they get to if they get to graduate level, then the same field, then they can do that.
That's
Uh,
right. That's
that's
right.
okay. So that's good. That sounds exciting. Sounds exciting. And so we're working on on the movie now. Be another year or so. Um,
Most
and
likely.
and you get to New York. I think I mentioned this last time.
To the city, I'm due to go. I usually get there once or twice a year. I haven't been there in a while. I was hoping to get there it's something involved Cocoa Puffs, but it just never came to fruition. It just never happened. So it's
Well,
next.
maybe if you want to talk about stigma and mental illness, I can arrange you to speak at the college I work at.
Right, yeah, because I told you, I talked to a lot of colleges. I've
Yeah.
talked to students, usually psychiatry student or psychology students. I went to Cornell, SU, Hobart,
Yeah.
Casanova. Yeah, I love talking to college students.
Okay. Sure. So
They're
okay,
great.
I did mention that to you. Okay. Good.
Yeah, yeah,
So I do
that'd be
hope
great.
that comes about sometime. Um, that's great, and it might even be able to pay for your trip down here, or part of it.
Oh, that
A
would
little
be,
bit of
yeah.
it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Let me know. I've got some things scheduling up right now, but and except for me, I'm going to be out of town for a couple months this winter. But otherwise, I'm here anytime.
Well, when you come down, I just right now the dean who's in charge of that is out of the country because it's intercession. But if you got a schedule, for between the middle of January to the end of April, whatever it is, that's the next semester coming up.
Yeah. All
So
right. We'll see.
that's good. Okay. So where are we going from here? I think this whole thing sounds very exciting, and we can. Uh, what do you think is this whole business about? Um, Besides your book and my blog and a lot of things that's going on about fighting the stigma and labeling and all the rest of that. What do you think
What
has
am
to
I?
be done on a like even on an individual level? With, for a message for the people who might be listening to this.
Yeah, my message is this is what I tell people when I do my presentation is I think it's incredibly important to tell your story. So let people know to not be afraid to disclose your illness either to your workplace or to your friends and your family and make them understand. I mean, give them books like mine or get them involved in NAMI because I think that so many people are so afraid to talk about it and nobody does. And as soon as Sheila Gacy, the one I did the family to family education class with, I one of my big things was, I don't have any support from my friends and my family. I'm not getting that support. And she said two things to me that really hit home. One is you have to make yourself a so there's some people you just can't be with, the negative people that drag you down. And then you have to make yourself a script and learn how to talk about your loved one to other people. And once I started talking to people, the more I talked to, probably 95% of the people I talked to came back with me with, I have a problem, or my daughter has a problem, my husband has a problem, and how I'm not alone anymore. And there's so many people. So if everybody was willing to get out there and tell their stories and not being afraid, then it wouldn't be so scary. And then there is a small percentage of people with mental illness who let's face it, they're scary. But it's a very, very small percent of people who become violent. It's like 1% of all mentally ill people, and 10% of all violent crimes are caused by those with mental illness. So if the statistics really aren't that scary. So if we realize that our neighbors, our coworkers, our bosses are dealing with this, then I think overall it's going to be better. And we're going to get more funding, we're going to get more understanding, we're going to get doctors talking about it. So my take-home message is tell our stories and tell everybody what you're going through, because you're not alone. You're really, truly not alone.
You're not alone if you're afflicted or if your family member is.
Exactly. No matter whether you're the one that's dealing with the illness directly or you're dealing with somebody that is, there are millions of people just like you. Almost everybody is dealing with some sort of issue.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's a great message to send out and to hope that everybody picks up the ball and runs with it, because again, I really think that'll help a lot. Okay, it's been great talking to you.
Great talking to you. I hope this video works, or the audio turns out this time. You know?
Yeah, I think it will. I think I'll get this up as soon as I can. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for talking, and thank you for supporting Where Are the Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. All right. Bye bye.